Hello, I'm Michelle Aldama. I'm a doctoral candidate in the Educational Leadership program at PSU with a specialization in curriculum and instruction. I also, as a graduate assistant, co-coordinate this space, which is the Inventing Remida Portland project. And I'd like to give you a little tour of the space and talk a little bit about materials and what Remida means to me. So right now you're looking at our foyer, and this is actually one of the latest collaborations that we did with another university around identity and reuse materials. Up here we have documentation of a workshop that we did with Helen Gordon, child development staff, around rebuilding, reimagining our city with reuse materials. And here you see displayed a lot of materials that actually have a lot of stories to tell about the history of Inventing Remida Portland. Inventing Remida Portland began with the donation of a local artist who works with wood and reuse materials that she salvages from the garbage. And she had a basement full of material that she donated to Helen Gordon's Reuse Center a while back. And so a lot of these materials are still from that donation that we reuse over and over again. And as of late, we've been integrating materials that part of my job is to solicit industrial discards. And that's where it connects to the Remida in Reggio Emilia, Italy, which is what inspires this work. The Remida in Reggio Emilia, Italy was born in 1996. It is basically a warehouse of industrial manufactured discards that the city of Reggio Emilia Waste Management collects for the recycling center, Remida. And these materials are sorted through and organized by volunteers who make them available to early childhood educators who want to integrate these raw, unfinished, complex materials into their learning environments in order to encourage children to think and make visible their theories through discard as a way of fostering intelligent moderation in the next generation. So we have begun soliciting industrial and manufactured discards, metals, plastics, textiles, and the like from local manufacturers. And here is a wall acknowledging these donors. We just recently had a cabinet built by Salvage Works that I'll show to you that houses our bottle caps, which is part of a project that we're working on here at Helen Gordon with the children collecting bottle caps in order to dialogue with young children about environmental degradation in a creative and developmentally appropriate way. Another example of materials that we have here at the center, this was donated by Aurochs Leathers, which is located in downtown Portland. And this is a very popular material for portraits that participants make of each other or themselves, and is often used as hair. In here is the Identity Atelier. We have a little focus on identity in this space. And this is the cabinet that I was talking about that was built. The craftsmanship for this cabinet was donated by Salvage Works as well as the wood. And even the wood tells a story that we can share with the children about where this wood came from. These are bottle caps that have been donated by Helen Gordon families. And these drawers were donated by Appliance City here in Portland, which is a local business that refurbishes refrigerators and clothes washers. There's no definition for Remida. Technically, the name came from King Midas, who transformed metal into gold. Remida. But everybody has their own definition of Remida and what it means to them. And so one way that I've come to understand Remida more, and it's taken a long time and it will probably never end, my developing an understanding and appreciation for it, is that so there's loose parts. Loose parts are materials that are not, fixed, that can be taken apart and put together in an infinite variety of ways. Loose parts can be store-bought or they can be reuse materials. So just because something is loose parts doesn't mean it's a Remida inspired material. Remida distinguishes itself as being industrial discard, manufacturer discard. The the materials is that they need to be provocations that are intentionally set out in a way that gives the materials an opportunity to invite the children and the adults to engage with them, so that there can actually be dialogue and conversation between people and salvage materials. So the display is really important, and another difference between inventing Remida Portland and, let's say, a local creative reuse art studio is that children are often invited and adults to work with the materials in small groups as opposed to really large groups, and time is of the essence. So there's usually a lot of time afforded to working with the materials, thinking about the materials, so time and display. This was intentionally designed so that it was at child level, and so that the children can see the materials and can touch and engage with the materials. One thing that Dr. Will Parnell mentioned coming back from Remida Reggio, his last trip, was that he noticed in the warehouse a lot of shelving like this had been turned sideways so that people could connect and communicate with each other as they were communicating with the materials. So that is actually what inspired purchasing these displays, was so that people could connect with each other as they are connecting with the materials. We don't call this space Remida is because it is not an official Remida. We are in the process of applying to become an official Remida, which would make us the 18th in the world and the first in the United States. But this space is very much in the context of our identity as Portlanders. So one example of that is you're not going to find any two Remidas alike. So some have more of a focus on art and performance art and exhibits, and others have different focus. And so one thing that, when we were coming up with finding our identity in this space, is that our collection of materials will soon be by bicycle, cargo bike, and we have a cargo bike that's being built custom for us with salvage parts and donated labor by Tom's Cargo Bikes, and that is how I will be going around and collecting materials for the foreseeable future. We are a small recycling center, and so we don't anticipate being able to collect a lot of materials as big as a warehouse might. And so we're going to have a zero emissions collection, which I believe will make us unique. Atelier, and this is an ongoing exploration right now in how to engage our really young friends, the infants and the toddlers, with reuse materials in a way that's safe, and because they don't necessarily understand the context of early childhood education for sustainability. At this point, up to 2 years, they're more just touching, sensing, feeling, playing with the materials, and then as they get older, we'll talk about the context of recycling, reusing, and reducing with them through the materials. Is that when we did the identity studies with the 2 and 3 year olds, 4 year olds, when they did their outlines of their bodies, we invited them to put their faces on them and to even put clothes on them to represent themselves. And in that project, we were able to explore with the children the nature of the textile industry, which actually has tremendous amounts of landfills. There's a ton of clothes that get thrown away. And then the issue of the dyes from the textiles going into the water. So these are opportunities to have these dialogues with children while engaged in a very inspirational and creative project that gives the children a sense of being citizens and part of the solution and informed people in a world where they're going to be inheriting a lot of these environmental issues. So the materials are complex, and the topics are complex, identity and reuse, and it gives children a chance to think about complex ideas and express their theories through the language and material of reuse, which has a tremendous affordance for expressing complex ideas. Phenomena with the materials this last year that we've been engaging the children with them here at Helen Gordon and adults, and that is that the materials, we also call them loose parts because oftentimes we work with them in an impermanent way rather than with glue or tape. We take them apart after using the materials, and ironically what we've noticed is that the loose parts that are reused in this case afford this connection between people. And one of our theories is that because they're so raw and unfinished and, like a studio teacher says, extra open-ended, the children really have to work together and the adults have to work together to figure out how to build with them and create with them. So another beautiful thing about these materials is that they are very playful. You'll notice when people, adults and children, are working with them that there's a lot of laughter and a lot of joy. And another theory that has come up around why that is because they're so imperfect, they're rejects, they're considered garbage that we rescue to give new life and new identities, and that whole idea children absolutely love, that we're giving them new life and new identities and rescuing them. It's really hard to screw up with these materials, and so a lot of the pressure is taken off of adults and children alike to represent something, realistically or perfectly, because you're working with imperfect materials. So it's often very playful.